What's going on? Evident, Big Jer. And in this video, we're going to be going over the basics of Serum and Massive. This is going to be like the pre-video where you kind of get your feet wet. We talk about just like the basic functions of these synths like oscillators, filters, modulation, that sort of thing. So when you jump into the first video, you're not like, "Ugh." All right, let's do it. So what is a wavetable? Well, a wavetable is a name given to a small amount of digital audio, sample data, or waveform, which is played back in a looping function. The frequency or the pitch of the resulting note is determined by the rate at which the waveform is played back. The tone of the sound is determined by the content of the waveform. So now that's cool, and I will include a glossary in this course so you could have all these terms and things in one location. You know what I'm saying? So you can keep it with you. I recommend working with notes. Anyway, but definitions are great, but sometimes there's something lost in translation a bit. So, cool. This is a waveform. If I click it, you can see that there's just one. That's it. It doesn't go anywhere else. In fact, this is my wavetable position, and I can't move through a waveform. It just is what it is. This, on the other hand, is a wavetable. And, just like the definition said, it happens in a looping form. The sound comes from the quality of the wavetable. So if I play this, you'll hear how it goes through. That's just okay. So that's a waveform, right? One. As I move through a bunch of waveforms, it becomes a wavetable. Okay, and if I go back over here, you can see that I can't move through this. So let's check this out over here in Massive too. So, you've got yourself your oscillator over here, and if I click onto this, I've got a bunch of, well, they're all wavetables here, right? So the way this works is if I pick like saw square, first one, that means that on this side of, the wavetable position, it's a pure square wave. And then if I move it on this side of the wavetable position, it becomes a saw wave. And anywhere in between, it starts to morph a little bit. Let me see if I can show you something. Okay, cool. So I got myself an oscilloscope. I think I said that right. Now, Serum kind of has these things built in, but Massive does not. So I want to show you what I mean. So on this side of the wavetable position, I got a square wave. See it right there, clear as day. And on this side, I got a saw wave. There it is. So as I move through this wavetable, right, it's just going to morph from a square wave to a saw wave. Right? And that's kind of like a hybrid wavetable because you're using two waveforms and just morphing between them. Now, we have other like crazy ones, like let's go to modern talking. It's a bit overdone, but it'll give you a good example of what I mean. Now, this is a wavetable in and of itself, not a combination of two waveforms. Let me turn that up a bit so we can get a bigger signal to the oscilloscope. Okay, so if you have Ableton, this oscilloscope is a Max for Live device, and it's free to download. So it might help you while you're learning Massive a little bit. Cool. And basically, that's the difference between a waveform and a wavetable. So the first section is the oscillator. So what is an oscillator? Well, without oscillators, your synthesizer would make no sound. Well, it would actually, but that's for another discussion. Oscillators produce the original sound, which you hear in your patches, and then it's fed through the rest of the signal path in the synthesizer. Modulation, effects, filters, that sort of thing, and that's where the sound is really designed. Let's take a look at what this section looks like in both Massive and Serum. All right, so we already kind of looked at this, but I don't want to leave anything up for chance, right? I want to hold your hand through this whole thing, so let's be very clear. Now, so in Serum, we've got two wavetable oscillators. They're going to be exact copies of each other. There's nothing that's going to happen over here that won't happen over here or vice versa. Serum also has a dedicated sub oscillator and a noise oscillator. Okay, let's check out what's going on in Massive. So over here in Massive, we've got 3 wavetable oscillators. And again, just like Serum, they're all going to be the exact same. So 1, 2, 3, all the exact same. Now, Serum had 2 wavetable oscillators and a dedicated sub-oscillator. And Massive doesn't have a dedicated sub-oscillator, but it does have 3 wavetable oscillators. So, there's going to be advantages to that, disadvantages to the other one. 6 one way, half a dozen the other. In addition to the wavetable oscillators, Massive has modulation oscillator and a noise oscillator. So even between these two synths, they both have oscillator section, but it's just a little different between the two. Now, all synths are going to start with an oscillator section. That's where your sound starts. But just because all synths have an oscillator section, it doesn't mean they're all going to be the exact same. And that's kind of what gives each synth part of its personality. Let's get over to the next section. So the next section is the filter section. And filters are one of the most important parts of sound creation, and they're the foundation to subtractive synthesis. Filters do exactly that. They filter out part of the sound, leaving you with a reduced portion of it, which sounds very different from the whole thing. Now, I know that we're doing wavetable synthesis, but we're still going to be shaping a lot of our wavetables with filters. Cool. Let's check out what this looks like in our synths. Okay, so Serum has one filter on the front GUI here and one filter in the effects section back here. Okay? So this is cool because you could do one here, and then this one you could place anywhere you want in the chain. So it's kind of a cool way to do it. The really standout feature inside of Serum is all the wacky filters it has. Like, it's got some really crazy filters that just aren't found anywhere else. And this is one of those things that I recommend you play with. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to go into a lot of these filters, and just doing what I do and setting the cutoff and everything is going to get you the sound. But to really understand what these filters are doing, yeah, man, this is a huge part of this synth. Cool. Let's see how Massive handles this. Over here in Massive, we've got 2 filters right here in the middle. And, they're not quite as crazy as the other filters in Serum. They've got some good ones. Comb filter's decent. You got the band reject, the band pass, double notch. So you've got some. Oh, and the scream. This one's the unique one over here. So this one is one that you won't find over in Serum. So these filters are pretty gnarly. They're pretty cool, and you could run them in serial or parallel. Now that means serial would mean like one goes into the other, and parallel means they're running like in parallel, so they won't really affect each other. They'll just kind of layer onto each other. These are the oscillators, and these are the filters. So I could send it to filter 1, I could send it to filter 2, or I could send it to like half and half, right? Cool. Over here are your filter volumes, and then this is your filter mixer. So you want more of filter 1, less of filter 1, that sort of thing. And anywhere you see these little sliders, that's going to send it to one or both of the filters. Cool. Let's get into the modulation section. The modulation section can be broken up into 2 things, envelopes and LFOs. Okay? These are both the key to the articulation of your sound. Because without them, you wouldn't really be able to move through any kind of wavetables or automate anything. LFO stands for low frequency oscillator, and it's a special kind of oscillator that oscillates at such a low frequency that we can't really hear it, but we can use it as a control source. So let's jump into seeing what this does because it's much easier to see than talk about. So the modulation section is going to be found down here in the bottom. And in Serum, envelope 1 is the amp envelope, meaning this takes the shape of the whole sound. So like I said, envelope 1 is the amp envelope, meaning this takes the shape of the entire sound. So so in this case, it's going to, as soon as I hit the key, it's going to come in right away. It's going to last for as long as I hold the key, and then as soon as I let the key up, it's going to stop. So this is your basic ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release. So attack is going to account for how long it takes the sound to come in. So right there, it's instant, right? But if I pull it like this, okay, you get it. And then on the other side, this is like your release over here, right? So if I have it like this, as soon as I lift my finger up, right, it stops. But if I open up my release, then, okay, and I can carve that out too. So again, envelope 1 takes the shape of the entire sound. Whereas if I change envelope 2, unless I apply this to something, it won't do anything, right? Cool. So I've got basically an amp envelope and 2 control envelopes. Now, when I say control envelopes, that means, let's say I want to put this over here on this oscillator here, and I want this to go like, or something like that, right? So I could use envelope 2 to kind of create that kind of a shape, right? Let's see what we got here. I'm going to take this over to here and cool. And you can see how the envelope kind of comes running through the wavetable. Dope. So that's what I mean by a control source. And anything that has, well, almost everything can be controlled, but anything that has this kind of like knob with this little, black kind of ring around it, that could be modulated. Even sometimes things that don't have that could be modulated by going to the matrix. We're going to talk about all that. The next part of this modulation section is the LFOs. Now, LFOs in this guy can be cyclical or looping, or they can act as an envelope. And this is really interesting because these are my preferred way of shaping things, because you could really dial this into any way you want. And here, watch, I'll bring this over here like that. And now it's going to take this shape and I'm going to put it on trigger. It's going to use the BPM of the song and loop at this rate right here. So I could. Cool. And again, this is how we're going to breathe life into our patch. Let's see what's going over on a Massive. So Massive's got a pretty cool modulation section as well. It's got a few interesting things. So it's definitely got envelopes, okay? And in this synth, envelope 4 is the amp envelope. So you've got the amp envelope here and 3 control envelopes here. Now you've got these green ones are going to be really interesting. We've got, well, they could all be whatever. So the way it's set up default is 2 LFOs, it's got a performer, and it's got a stepper. Now I could switch any of these to anything. Like if I didn't want the stepper, I could go over here and make it another LFO or whatever. These green ones are all like interchangeable, okay? And we're going to get into all of this. But basically, it allows you to take control of almost any parameter you want, in almost any way you want. Cool. Let's get into that effects section. The effects section is found usually at the end of the chain. This is where you could really polish your sound and get it ready to be placed in your track. Different synths will have different effects available, and that's, again, one of the main things that's going to really shape your sound at the end. Cool. Let's see what's going on in these guys. So Serum has a pretty advanced effects section here. What I really like about it is it's got a lot of really cool effects, and you can move them around. So let's say I wanted, like, my distortion to come after my flanger or something. I could do that. Let's say I wanted to put my reverb before my compressor, so I can compress my reverb signal. I could do that too. So it's very, very flexible, and these effects are pretty good, man. Like, they're really good, actually. So, yeah, this effects section is a lot of really cool stuff happens in this effects section. Let's see about Massives. Now, Massives effects section is leaves a little bit to be desired when you compare it to Serum's. So you've got effects 1 here, and you got a couple of guys. They're okay, they're all right. And over here you've got effects 2, and it's basically the same list. I cannot move them around. They kind of are what they are, and this is more of a polish stage where Serum is, you could do some designing here, if you know what I mean. So again, one's not better than the other. They're just different, and I'm going to show you how to take advantage of both of them. Well, I hope that was a little bit of a demystification on how these guys work. I don't want you to be scared or intimidated in any way when you go into this. Like I said, I'm here to hold your hand, and if I've missed something or if you feel like you're left in the dark on something, please put it in the comments section. I will quickly fix it and offer you a solution. All right, guys, happy designing, and I'll catch you in that first video. See ya.